My name is Bree Davies. I'm a product manager for Portfolio for Jira. I'm really excited to be sharing some insights with you guys this morning about how we can overcome some challenges and really get the best out of our scaled Agile implementations using Portfolio for Jira and also a few of the other really awesome tools that we have in the Atlassian suite. So how many of you guys and girls here this morning are in the process of thinking about how you might be scaling your Agile teams? This is awesome. And how many have tried Portfolio for Jira, or have at least heard about it? Okay, cool. So, I don't know about you guys, but when I saw this image, it really resonated with me. In a previous life, I've run scaled Agile implementations, and it's really quite well known at the team level. Everyone does it quite well. It's really easy to manage and normally works quite beautifully. But when we're then adding teams and we've got programs and then portfolios, it can all get a little bit confusing. And often when we speak with organizations and they're thinking about how they're going to scale Agile, a lot of the focus is on the tools. And what are the products that we're going to use? What are the systems that we're going to get put in place? And sometimes we can forget about the people. So I will obviously talk a lot about tools today and how we can use tools to achieve a more efficient scaled Agile implementation, but we absolutely shouldn't forget about the people as we go through this journey. So, what are we going to talk about this morning? Why should we scale Agile? So we've just established that it's something that most of us in the room here are trying to do or is something that we're about to embark upon. I'm going to share the story of one of our customers. I can't share their name with you. I'm not sure if you guys have got this in the States. In Australia, often if there's an ad on television for dentists, they do this like face the mirror and they wave with the back of their head. So to represent our really awesome customer, I've chosen a bunch of super cheesy stock photos, which is in no way connected with their organization. But they are a really fast-growing auto insurance company. And they've used Portfolio for Jira, Jira Software, and also Confluence to scale their Agile operations. So over the course of this morning's presentation, I'm going to explain some anecdotes of the journey that they've gone through and some of the tips that they've shared with me and some of the ways that they've used Portfolio for Jira to really get some nice alignment and visibility across their scaled implementation. So I'm going to call them Acme because, as I mentioned, I can't reveal their actual name. And the problems that they were experiencing were that overall they found that managing their teams was really time-consuming. And not the fun parts of time-consuming. They weren't spending lots of time on really effective collaboration and having really awesome discussions about how we're going to deliver value. They were spending all of their time with their heads in spreadsheets, trying to get alignment. I can see a few heads that are nodding here, and over some of the conversations I've had with customers at our booth, I know this is something that a lot of people are dealing with. And this meant that their planning was really inefficient. So they would have a bunch of product managers and program managers sitting in a room trying to line up their different spreadsheets, and calling it inefficient is probably being a little generous. So they would make their changes, and then things change at the team level, and it would all get out of date, and it was just way too time-consuming. And of course, the more teams you have, typically you will have some dependencies between teams. So making sure that everyone's aware of who's doing what's the best order for us to do things to make sure that we've really got the most efficient potential roadmap was also super manual, and things were slipping and things were missing. So Acme embarked on a really conscious decision to consider what was going to be the best way for them to scale. And they wanted to do this because they wanted to make sure that they were managing and coordinating multiple teams on all stages of a project. So they would have a bunch of different teams who were all working on the same product. So they needed to keep them aligned, and they needed to really remove as much of that manual overhead as they possibly could. One thing which I'm sure will resonate with a lot of people in the room today is that scaling Agile is not something that happens overnight. So in the case of Acme, they started in 2014 with one Scrum team. Fast forward to 2017, and they've now got 13. And so this is built up over time. So before we get much too further, I know most of you here are familiar with Portfolio for Jira, but for those who aren't, I'm just going to really quickly touch on what it is. So Portfolio for Jira is an add-on for Jira Software. It integrates seamlessly with Jira, and it allows you to create data-driven roadmaps. So we're pulling information from Jira all the time, allowing you to manage things like the scope of multiple projects all in a single view, allow you to generate roadmaps, allow you to look at things like capacity management, and look at just some resource allocation across multiple teams, and generate some really powerful reporting. So what this provides you is visibility and transparency in a single view, which is awesome and really, really important when you're trying to scale your Agile implementation. Just going to give you a quick overview as to what Portfolio looks like for those who are brand new to it. So we've got the data-driven roadmaps, as we mentioned before, our scope table down the bottom, which is where we can manage different parameters around our data, like our estimates, release assignments, and a bunch of other different data points. And something else that I just wanted to touch on before we get into some of the nitty-gritty is the word programs. So it's a really, really common term when we're talking about portfolio program management, but it can mean different things depending on the context that you're in. So many of you here today probably have programs within your own organizations. So you probably have a bunch of different teams and they're all working on the same product, and you might call them, that is a program of work inside your own organization. The next, if anyone here is familiar with SAFe, you will know that a program in the SAFe context refers to a very specific level within that framework. And lastly, we have a brand new feature within our Portfolio for Jira, which is called programs. And I'm going to go into a lot of detail around how you can use this a little later in the presentation, but just wanted to do a quick level set so that we're moving through with clarity. Okay, so now we've talked about why we need to scale Agile. We need to make sure that we're moving away from manual tools and giving ourselves lots of time to make sure that we're focusing on the really important parts of collaboration. Next, we're going to talk about setting really strong foundations in Jira. And key to success with Portfolio for Jira, it can come a lot from how you've got your Jira software instance configured. But even before that, being clear about how inside your organization you're going to structure your teams, whether you're going to have 3 teams and they're working on the same product, and that might be a program within your organization. And then understanding how that's going to feed into your Jira architecture and then flow into Portfolio is really key. So make sure that you spend some time thinking about that and making sure that you've got clarity across your organization at that level. So let's talk about Acme for a second and what their Jira software setup looks like. So as I mentioned earlier, they've got 13 Scrum teams. So what that means for them is 13 team boards. So we've talked about, and especially at the booth over the last few days, the difference between a Jira project and a Jira board. So boards belong to a Jira project. And Acme have got their boards separated out per team, which means when they come to connect to their portfolio plan to get that single view and that really clear visibility and transparency in that single portfolio plan, they were able to connect all of these boards into it. So what are the key Jira fields for portfolio success? Custom fields has been a really hot topic over the last few days. I've had lots of really great conversations at our booth about how people are using custom fields and some of the challenges that they might be encountering due to them, or some of the value that they're getting in their organization by using custom fields really well. And there are a few standard Jira fields, which are really key for portfolio success. And the first is the fixed version field. How many of you guys in the room here today know what the fixed version field is? Oh, awesome. And how many use it? Okay, fantastic. So this is really important because it communicates between portfolio around releases and release assignment. So in Jira Software, you'll be used to seeing these in your version panel. So what we're looking at here is one of the new issue experiences. And you'll see the fixed version field highlighted here. So this is where we make version assignments inside Jira Software, and we'll talk a little later around how that correlates into portfolio. The next is the estimate field. So standard estimate fields are really important for portfolio because we need to be able to read the size of your issue. And often we'll speak with customers and they may have created their own estimate field. And we really rely on this to understand the size of your work. So the estimate fields, whether it's story points or hours, this is one of the key fields to share that sizing information between portfolio and Jira. And next is the team field. So this is not one that is absolutely essential for success with portfolio, but it will allow you to share team assignments between portfolio and Jira and be able to visualize those. So within Jira Software, what you can do is if you're creating an issue, perhaps your teams might be building out their backlog or breaking down an epic, you can add team assignments directly from Jira, and then this communicates with portfolio. And the last is the parent link field. And this is really, really important because it allows you to get the most out of your hierarchy. And when we're thinking about how we're going to scale Agile, getting our hierarchy of issues right and having that really clear, it will really, really set you guys up for success. So enabling the parent link field will allow you to share the hierarchical assignments between your issues and be able to view that inside Jira Software. And this is how it looks on the issue. So we can see, I'm looking at an epic here, and we can see the initiative that it belongs to. And conversely, inside Jira Software, you can see all of the epics that will exist within a particular initiative or whatever your next level of hierarchy above an epic is named by using the parent link field. So back to Acme and what they have, that's some of the lessons that they learned as they were scaling Agile and as they were adapting their Jira Software instance along the way. So they introduced relatively minor customizations. They made a really conscious effort to keep Jira as simple as possible. And one of the things that they found that really helped as they scaled their teams is they have the same experience for their teams. And by experience, I mean workflow. So all of their teams use the same workflow. All of their teams have consistent issue types. And they found this has really helped them because it has allowed, as people might move between teams or as they spin up new teams, it's really easy to onboard people. And then as you're using additional tools that will be hanging off Jira, you've got this nice consistent experience. So you don't have to deal with different teams that may be doing things in totally different ways. And the way that they work in terms of their planning is very much top-down, meets bottom-up. So we'll talk a little bit more about their process shortly, but their teams will plan a few sprints ahead, and they'll do that inside Jira Software. And then Acme will use Portfolio to visualize what all of the teams are doing in a single view, and then they can make really active trade-off decisions around priority and capacity and perhaps de-scope some stuff or share resources, which is a really great way and is much more efficient than using all those spreadsheets that they were before. So, as I mentioned, custom fields are really powerful, and custom fields are great, but think carefully before you implement a custom field inside Jira Software that replicates the existing behavior that a standard Jira field will. And if you're thinking about all of the different custom fields that you might have and perhaps freaking out a little bit about it, definitely don't worry. There's a few simple steps that you can do to kind of evaluate where you're at. So audit your customizations. Spend some time with your Jira admin and your teams and understand what are the custom fields that you have in place. And then determine what's essential. It's better for everyone if you're only entering the information that's absolutely required on your Jira issue. Think of your teams and the people that are having to enter in data for every single field, and just keep it simple. So we know that we need to, or we should try and keep Jira as simple as possible. as we're scaling our teams, it's really, really important to keep things consistent across our teams. Workflows, the different issue types that we're using, and now we're going to talk about our hierarchy and how we can really use hierarchy inside our organization and then match that to hierarchy inside Portfolio for Jira to optimize for communication. So if we match our organizational hierarchy to our issue hierarchy inside Jira and inside Portfolio, different levels of your organization will really understand the information that they're digesting. And when this matches inside Portfolio, you can slice and dice your schedule and your reporting in a bunch of different ways, which again can reduce so much of that manual effort in trying to recreate a similar report with more abstract information for, say, a more senior stakeholder. So let's take a sample organization here, and this is not too dissimilar to our friends at Acme. So we have our teams doing the stuff down the bottom. They're typically working with a product owner, and then a product owner will be working with perhaps product managers and business partners at that next level. And now let's overlay a potential issue hierarchy. And Portfolio for Jira is framework agnostic, so you can name your levels of hierarchy whatever you like. So if you're following, say, SAFe or just scaling Agile, or you've got your own flavor and you want to name your different levels of hierarchy something different, you can do that within Portfolio. But for argument's sake here, I've used initiatives and programs and then strategic objectives and programs. So if we think about the different levels in our organization and the granularity of information that they're most interested in, by bringing this level of hierarchy into Jira, into Portfolio rather, we can really set expectations over the level of information that our stakeholders are going to be consuming. So inside Portfolio, you can set in theory, an infinite level of hierarchy. Most commonly, we see customers will have around 5 levels. So you might start at the really high strategic objectives, which is kind of for your senior stakeholders, where you're really wanting to connect the company's strategy to the work that the teams are doing. And I've got here 4 levels. So you can customize these. You can name them whatever you like, as I mentioned, and really have a play with these. You set one level of hierarchy across all of your plans right now, which again is really nice for consistency across your organization. So we've talked a lot about the technical parts of scaling Agile, but right at the start, I mentioned that it's really about people. So it's so important to make sure that you're keeping all of your people aligned, especially when your program is moving quickly. So pardon the super cheesy stock photo. These people are having a great time being all nice and aligned. And what are some of the non-technical practices that you can use to make sure that everyone's really on the same page? So support team collaboration with really active communication. So inside Acme, what this looks like is they have product managers, product owners and business partners, and they're meeting really regularly in person throughout the month. And they're inspecting their portfolio plan and they're constantly juggling their priorities. And they're having a really active conversation because now they've got the time and they've moved away from their manual tools and they can make these trade-offs inside Portfolio. And then at the team level, they also have a bi-weekly portfolio planning meeting. And this is a really important ceremony for Acme because what it allows them to do is constantly review the next 3 releases. And they're looking at the work that's going in at a broader level, the work that's going into each sprint, and the work that each team is doing because they're trying to make sure that they've got the most efficient roadmap possible. So they're juggling things like resources and having really active conversations about cross-team dependencies. And then at the team level too, they've introduced a Scrum of Scrums meeting, which I'm sure most of you here today have heard about. And this is where the teams or a representative from the teams will get together, and again, they'll have these really active conversations about, hey mate, you said you were going to be doing this particular issue in this sprint. Remember that I really need it for the next one. Portfolio does help you calculate a schedule around dependencies, but that doesn't mean that you take the in-person communication completely off the table. So they're using this meeting to resolve blockers, keep communication flowing, and making sure that they're keeping up that personal connection between their teams, which is so, so important. The more teams that you have, it's a lot of people, and having that personal connection can really help, team happiness, which is really important, which also flows into team efficiency. So we've talked about our hierarchy and how we can really optimize that when our stakeholders inside our organization understand the level of information they're going to be getting and how that can correlate inside Portfolio for Jira and also Jira Software. Now let's talk about how we should and why we should plan to plan, and some of the specific Portfolio for Jira features that can really help you take away some of that manual effort when you're scaling Agile. So the first thing that I always suggest to customers is just take a moment, take a few hours to plan to plan. So again, we talked at the start about understanding how your teams are structured. If you've got clarity around that, then how you're going to bring your teams into Portfolio should be relatively straightforward. But think about inside a plan, is that going to be one of your programs of work? Is it going to be a single product that you know you've got lots of teams that are working on, and there's lots of dependencies between those teams, so it's really important to get that single view. So do a little bit of portfolio architecture before you jump in. So inside Portfolio, we represent each of our streams of work as a project. So as we've got highlighted here, this is one of our teams, and this will show inside the portfolio plan all of the work that is being derived from the connected issue source. So that's the Jira board, Jira project, or a specific filter. And one of the points of confusion and a conversation that I've been having with customers at the booth over the last few days is how you use releases inside your organization and what that means to you. So a lot of people don't use releases at all. And just because it's called releases doesn't mean that it's this is the day that we push all of our work into production. You might be releasing all the time. So releases inside Portfolio is just to represent a concept of time. So you might use releases to set monthly milestones. That's how we do it inside the Portfolio team. You might use it to plan out your next quarter. But using releases inside Portfolio is a really powerful way to help you prioritize your work and chunk out, this is all the stuff we want to do in this given time frame. Now Portfolio, help me calculate if that's possible, and let's align all of our teams along this potential time horizon. And the beauty of using releases inside Portfolio is that it will allow your schedule to go red. And going red is great because you'll know this well in advance, so you can really proactively manage your stakeholders. I know I've been in this situation before, and I'm sure many of you have in the room today, where you realize that you're going to be late, way too late. And expectation management then becomes a little tricky, and you've really got to react and scramble, and that is a position that nobody likes to be in. So using Portfolio and using releases inside Portfolio will allow you to make those trade-offs. You can see that there might be too much work for your given time frame, so you need to pull some stuff out, or you need to look at your estimates, or perhaps you can pinch a resource from another team. So now let's run through some of the Portfolio for Jira features which can really help you keep aligned when you've got a whole bunch of teams inside your organization. So you may want to align several streams of work to the same goal. So say, for example, you've got an Android team, you've got an iOS team, you've got a platform team, and you're all working together towards your mobile MVP launch. And what will that look like inside Portfolio? So you can use releases, of course, at the individual team level, but you can also group those releases together into what we call a cross-project release. And this is really cool and really powerful for a couple of reasons. The first is that it allows you to really zoom in on your schedule on this specific time horizon. And it allows you to focus in on the teams that are doing this particular work. And by filtering your schedule in this way, it will also filter the scope table below, so you can really digest this information in a nice, clear way. The other reason why it's really cool is you can also get some super clear reporting from it. So it can be as high level as you like, depending on your level, the hierarchy that you've chosen. And you can embed these reports straight into Confluence as well, and we'll talk about that a little later. So this can be a really nice, simple way to get some clear reporting for your stakeholders and also for your team to make sure that you're on track. So if you can see that your cross-project release is red, you're immediately being warned that something's not quite right, so you know to dive in a little bit deeper and have a look at which team might be experiencing some challenges and potentially might need a little bit of help. Next is cross-team dependencies. How many of you guys here today really feel like you spend way too much time having to deal with dependencies? Yeah, it's a big problem. And being able to really clearly visualize all of your dependencies in a single view it can be really challenging. And it's definitely something that I feel your pain from previous lives. And one of the things that we've just released inside Portfolio for Jira is a new dependency report. So what this will allow you to do, think of all of these teams that you've got working together. Communication around this sort of stuff is absolutely essential, but when you need a really solid artifact to make sure that you haven't missed anything, you can use our new Portfolio dependency report. So it will surface all of the issues inside your plan that have a dependent connection. You can see their status, you can see scheduled end, scheduled start date, so you can make sure that everyone's doing what they're meant to be doing, or if not, you've got the information that you need to follow up with the right people. One of the big conversations that we've been having over the last few days, and we often have with our customers, is inside a big organization, our execs want to know that we're working on the right stuff. They don't really want to know at the team level, like, what is the user story that relates to this level of the strategy? So what is a really nice way, and a simple way, that we can visualize our overall company strategy and really strongly connect that to the work that the teams are doing? And inside Portfolio for Jira, there is a report, a feature, which we call the themes report. So this is completely different to your level of hierarchy. We think of themes as areas of strategic imperative that typically don't end, and you will just keep chipping away at them over many months or potentially many years. So you can set the percentage of priority that you believe, or inside your organization, that it's important for our teams to be spending most of their time on foundations. Or eventually we'd like to spend some time on one-click payments, but we know that we need to get the foundations right first. So we can have a look at a target breakdown. We can have a look at then comparing that to how the work in our backlog is broken down. And then we can also compare that to what's actually getting done. And we can also visually color our schedule by these strategic objectives. So depending on the level of hierarchy that you're currently looking at, it's a really nice view that you can show your senior stakeholders to show them the sort of work that's being done. And also at the team level too, it's so important for our engineers and designers and product managers to understand how does their work fit into the bigger picture. And by having this nice visualization, they've got a really clear view of, okay, so I might be building a very small feature, but I understand how it connects to the strategy. So keeping that level of alignment and that level of transparency, so important when we're scaling Agile. This is Are we good? Everyone hear me okay? Awesome. No? Hey, are we back? We're good. Awesome. Thank you for the thumbs up in the back. So we may have a few different teams who are working inside a portfolio plan. But when we've got a few different portfolio plans, then we need to get another level of a single view. And we can use a new feature, which I mentioned before, the Portfolio for Jira Programs feature, which will allow you to achieve this outcome. So if you've come to see us at the booth, you may have heard about this. We've just been speaking about it a bit over the course of Summit. We're so excited about this new feature. So what it will allow you to do is bring multiple plans into a single view. So this is really going to help organizations that are probably in, like might have 50 teams, 100 teams, to get that consolidated and single view of all of the work that might be happening across your organization. So each of these swim lanes here, these represent separate plans. And we can also have a look at a scope perspective. So we can look at this across whatever levels of hierarchy above an epic that we're really interested in, and it will aggregate all of that information together. So we can see progress through these initiatives, we can see the status of them, we can see who's working on them. So this is also a really, really important artifact, A, to share with our senior stakeholders, and then to keep big programs of work really nicely aligned. And lastly, we've got all of this great information inside Portfolio for Jira, but we need to surface it. We need to surface it for everybody. So Portfolio for Jira will integrate really nicely with Confluence. So you can build your own dashboard of sorts inside Confluence by embedding portfolio reports using the HTML include macro. You embed them as iframes, and they're dynamic, which means they're always up to date. So again, that's another report that we don't have to generate manually, which is fantastic. So the beauty of putting it inside Confluence means that you can add some context and commentary around why something may have shifted, why we've decided to prioritize this work. So as a senior stakeholder, you can really set them up their own custom self-serve page where they can find all the information that they need. So they don't have to keep coming to you and say, hey, where is this at? Hey, where is this at? Why is this slipped? Why did you make this decision? You've got some top-level information that they can find whenever they like by going into Confluence. So we haven't spoken about Acme for a little while, but they've been using most of these features. Programs and Dependency Report is brand new, so we'll get their feedback from these guys shortly on it. But what have been the big benefits that they found from using Portfolio for Jira and also putting a bit more structure around how they use Jira software? So the big one for them is visibility. By using Portfolio for Jira, they've been able to bring all of their teams, which for them is their own program of work, into a single portfolio plan. So they've really got that single view of what everyone's doing. So they're spending their time doing the things that they want to be doing, like making sure that they're building the right thing and making sure that they've got work prioritized in the right order, then making sure they've just got their spreadsheets properly organized. Next, Portfolio for them has really become a source of truth. So, of course, the Jira data is the actual source of truth because this is what's feeding Portfolio. But inside Acme, the product managers and product owners are really using their portfolio plans to make sure that the right work is being executed. So they don't have to dig into a bunch of different boards or have lots of different kind of, fairly low-level conversations to get the information that they need. And most importantly, it's really increased collaboration and the right kind of collaboration. So everybody can see what everyone else is doing in a single view. It's always up to date because it's pulling from Jira, so they've been able to ditch all that manual work. And one of the things that they really use Portfolio for is they use it as a lever to make sure that they can potentially share resources across teams. If they can see that one team is doing a little tough, they've got a lot of work on, they'll maybe move somebody across. So having this single view makes that really, really easy for them. Remember that there's a bunch of different ways that you can scale Agile. SAFe is really popular, and we have a SAFe white paper. If you come and see us at the booth, we can help you get registered for that, and it will step you through in quite a bit of detail how you can configure Jira software for SAFe, and then also how that will feed into Portfolio. So come and see us at the booth, we'll help you get signed up for that. But there are a few other different frameworks out there. So make sure that you do your research and understand what's the best framework for your organization. And to get you started, there's a few different ways that you can go about it. So depending on the scale of your organization, typically the next level up after the team level would be what we call a scrum of scrum. So you might have maybe 5 teams and you can level them up in a reasonably lightweight way. The next is a framework called Large Scale Scrum. Basically, it takes Scrum principles and just kind of blows them up to a really big level. And lastly is a fairly new one, which is called Disciplined Agile. And they call themselves more of a decision-making framework, and they pull some really interesting concepts from a bunch of different frameworks together. Simplicity has been a really big theme of this talk, and it definitely applies to the framework that you choose. So focus on just enough. Don't go too heavy on the process too soon. As you feel like you need more, then add more. And even though this might sound a little bit like a plug, we do have these really, really fantastic resources on our website called the Agile Coach. I'm not sure if everyone here is familiar with it. Check them out. Even before I worked at Atlassian, I used to use this as a resource all the time. It really is fantastic information. So, some final takeaways. Keep Jira simple. Really make sure that you're not using any custom fields that may be replicating Jira standard behavior or things that come out of the box. And if you are, understand the implications that they may cause. And think about your teams, and as you scale your teams, if you've got consistent workflows, consistent issues, it's going to make that so much easier for everyone. Match your hierarchy to your organization so that your stakeholders really understand the level of information that they're consuming. And then take a moment to plan, understand the information that you want to see back inside your portfolio plan, and then how that fits with the structure of your organization. And lastly, remember that scaling is more than just a set of tools. Don't forget about your people. Use tools to automate all of the really boring and redundant stuff about scaling, like your planning, and make sure that you're spending time with your people to be having really active conversations about prioritization and collaboration, and making sure that everyone is completely on the same page. And use a tool like Portfolio for Jira to bring it all into a single view. So you've really got that awesome transparency across your organization, which is so, so important as you scale. Thank you.